The Hit era really tried to come up with the most creative, uncommon personalities and designs within the field of engines. The new series characters as a whole are pretty slept upon, especially when you consider there's only 4 of them in the current CGI series. That's why I wanted to make a video appreciating them a little. Before we begin the ranking, I would just like to get across that I will be ranking these characters based on their episodes or maybe even different eras they appeared in. Design, and of course, personality will be considered, if they haven't. I will be categorizing them using letters. A being one of my favorites, B being great to good, C being okay, average, and D being bad. And I decided to do this in a tier list maker because I thought it'd be more fun to make it into a list rather than just giving it number ratings. I will not be putting their magazine stories, appearances into consideration, although I would recommend reading them if you want to like these characters more. Some of you may refer to these characters as the cash grab characters. I am aware that ever since Season 7 rolled around, it has been a tradition in Thomas to introduce one-off characters that have little to no personality and barely appear, or heck, even spoke. A majority of them would have had an episode focused on them, a few cameos, and after that, gone. Oh, but you can bet your dollar that they created a ton of toys out of each and every one of them. To be honest, all of their props look amazing, and I believe the modeler's skill is evident in their charming designs. The first season to feature them was Series 9, unlike the characters from Series 6 and 7, some of whom continue to be relevant or even became a main character. The Hit era newbies got the short end of the stick. Some of them left little to no impact on the franchise, and once CGI hit, more than half of them were gone to never be seen again. Heck, them being underdeveloped gives content creators the freedom to build off from their character and make some amazing stories with it, which is why I love watching fan content about these guys. If you do or do not like these characters, that is totally fine. I don't want you to feel guilty either way. In the end of the day, they're just Thomas characters after all. I think everyone who was born around the early 2000s can all agree we have some soft spot for these characters. You're going to hear me repeat the word potential a lot during this video, as I believe a lot of these characters in this list had potential but lacked growth due to them not appearing most of the time outside of their first appearance. Another thing is that you will find myself discussing more about some characters compared to others, as only a few of them have a decent amount to talk about. For example, those who have returned in the CGI series may have more to talk about compared to a character who appeared in a single episode. I'd also like to add that these are my opinions. Maybe I can be too nice or hard on a character, probably because I grew up the years these guys were introduced. They just hold a very special and nostalgic place in my heart. You are allowed to disagree with them, just please remember to act civilized in the comments when writing your own opinions. Without further ado, let's begin the ranking. I will be ranking them in chronological order, so Season 9 newbies first, then Season 10, and so on. Also, no, I do not count the Season 7 characters as Hit era newbies. They are parts of the Lane era, otherwise we would be here all day. Enjoy my analysis on literal 16 different Thomas characters. Oh boy, she's one of my favorites. I know she is really overrated, but I still can't help but like her. I made a tweet recently asking who's everyone's favorite Hit era character, and Molly was the character that I believe got the most votes, and I can sort of see why. I say Molly is one of my favorites because she had such a lasting impression in the fandom and had a subversive steam engine personality. In her debut episode, she is depicted to be relatively quiet and passive despite her lack of appearances compared to the Steam team. In contrast to say Edward, Skarloey, or Percy at this point of the show, she would have functioned much better in the warrior type of character. The engine design, including livery, also helps her design look really aesthetic. I, for one, for the longest time, were convinced they wanted to add her into the main cast with how often she appeared in episodes and marketing. Molly has a main character design for Thomas. She has a primary standout color a sort of similar shape to the other main tender engines, and she's just overall very eye-catching. I see parents and normies mistaking her for being an OG character. It's a shame that things didn't work out the way it was supposed to, since it might have prevented some problems in the future. She was a good contrast from Emily in the Hit era because she was timid, uncertain, and soft-spoken, which I wish they had utilized her in more stories, especially with how they had a bad history with one another. Overall, I give her a solid A. I like Molly. I think having an engine equivalent to conjoint twins is a really interesting idea. It is a really creative concept, which makes you wonder why hadn't a character like them been introduced sooner. The concept of a double fairly, where both ends are sentient and bicker with each other, is actually pretty smart. They are literally like the CGI Scottish twins, but conjoint. Typically, in the Railway series, if a character has two faces, they're the same character. A crucial distinction to make before talking about Mighty Mac, since they are two different characters with the same cab. It is very evident from the eye the team did their research, and Mighty Mac's basis and real-life history are very much present in their introductory story. I really do enjoy them. Fans tend to give Mighty Mac too much hate when I think they are more interesting than FREDDIE, another narrow gauge engine introduced in the Hit era. A little bit biased here, but I loved playing with the motorized Mighty Mac when I was a kid. My parents had bought it for me as a surprise, and I would always find it so interesting yet bizarre having two sentient faces placed in one engine. It brings back so many wholesome memories. I give Mighty Mac a B. Dennis is without a doubt one of my favorites. Definitely not personal bias because we share the same. He has a personality that everyone can relate to, which is of course being lazy. We all have had days where we feel like doing nothing, and Dennis represents that brilliantly. He could have had a character arc if the Hit era didn't literally kill the character after his first appearance. Seriously, you'd think the guy would appear a bit more like a background character or something, but no. The last we saw of him was in the Great Discovery special, and that's it. Dennis is undoubtedly the finest Hit era newbie, since out of all of the newcomers, he has the most distinctive personality. A particularly clever subversion is a character who doesn't care in a show where being really useful is such a big deal. It's really clever, and I believe it could lead to some really intriguing new thematic depth in a character who just doesn't give a damn. Fans have argued that he is like another James, Daisy, or even Diesel in their eyes. However, I disagree. They're simply picky about the work they do, and that doesn't necessarily make them lazy. Knowing Norman took Dennis's position in Day of the Diesels makes me unhappy, since Norman's existence in that role is unpleasant, and he is uninteresting and meaningless in his current form. I believe that Norman would finally have a task if they brought Dennis back. These two would be the first identical twins in the series who are diametrically opposed. Norman may be the diligent brother, but he also has like a faulty engine, while Dennis is just lazy and works perfectly fine. An interesting dynamic that could have led to a Dennis arc. And one quick thing about Dennis, I also like his design. It's very minimalist and realistic, which I personally think makes him stand out from the rest of the bright, flashy Hit era newbies. I put him in A. I just love the guy that much. This might be a controversial one. I'm going to be straightforward with you guys. I like Neville. But while writing this script for this video, I struggled to find a lot of solid reasons why. I've come to realize he actually has no defined personality. Yikes. Well, let's start with the episode he got introduced in. Yeah, I do really like Thomas and the New Engine, as it delivers the message, don't judge someone who's different before you get to know them quite well. The engine's bickering segment was entertaining to watch, and the crash scene with Neville dangling off the bridge was really cool. A lot of the time when someone says they like Neville, it's usually because of his design, and I'm pretty much with that group. I was mainly drawn to Neville because of his distinctive shape and intense black paintwork. He looks different from all of the other colorful engines. Unlike characters like Dennis and Molly, I don't think he had potential within his character. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I just think he was very underdeveloped. If he was still a relevant character in the show, I still think there could have been other stuff explored about him, such as him looking like a diesel, maybe write a story about that, or him being called a ugly duckling, apparently. He's a C for me. His merchandise was really nice though.
It's me!
Giving her a red livery was one of the best choices ever made. It is a nice contrast of her being young by being pink to transitioning her maturing with the cherry red. Given her base's connection to Thomas, I find it painful that she was so underused. Rosie's tomboyness and Thomas's idolarity actually establishes such a solid basis. Why they wasted her, even throughout the Brenner era, I will never understand. I strongly believe they had big plans for Rosie just like Molly, both model and CGI era. She was the only standard gauge engine out of the main cast in the hit era, outside of narrow gauge engines, to have her own proper leading episode. Her debut episode was fun, and a relatively new concept for a new engine introduction episode. Having a character obsess over Thomas? Yeah, it sounds creepy, but I think it would sound a lot less weird if you consider them having more of a sibling dynamic. As for Rosie's Funfair special, I don't hate it. I actually find it to be stupidly funny at times, like this scene. Overall, another one of my favorites. I'm glad she was one of the few chosen to be brought back to CGI. Shame they didn't do anything much when they had the chance. She's an A. I actually don't hate his design. I think it's neat, nothing creepy, just be glad it isn't the prototype. But I'm also not the biggest fan of him. I just don't think there was much story potential when his whole gimmick is quite literally leaving Sodor. Yeah, he was pretty boring. Thomas and the jet plane had an interesting concept, but with a poor execution. He's a D for me. It surprises me it took Thomas till the 10th season to give a breakdown crane a face. Rocky appeared a lot during the hit era, but was one of the few who returned to CGI, and even then got used a lot too. During the model series, they didn't really do much with him character-wise. It is a shame since his appearances are based on him being a crane and not because of his character. Rocky is a chill guy. I like how much more down-to-earth he is than the other search and rescue team members during CGI. I don't have any issues with him, although his debut episode, Edward Strikes Out, was rather weak due to obvious reasons. I get that Edward had been the de facto breakdown train engine for the entire series, and he might have felt threatened when seeing Rocky, but they should have acknowledged that in the actual episode a bit better. Really can't say much about him besides being a crane with a face. He's a C for me. He is still cool though. I'm pretty sure he's a newbie that they did the most with. He had pretty much a total of 3 leading episodes, which gives him one of the most times to shine out of everyone. There's no doubting the complexity of the lore around him, so I won't delve into that as it is a messy subject. But because of how enduring and entertaining he is, I'm ready to bend some canon to make him work. He's a fair superior than another numbered 7 narrow gauge engine, Ivo Hugh. It's such a great idea to turn one of the elder engines into an absolute daredevil, and occasionally I wish they had done more with it. As for his episodes, they range from average to boring. His introductory episode was fine, although it was very flawed with their execution of Skarloey and Rheneas being young and immature, but that was a general hit era issue. Freddie struggles with the fact that he is aging and not what he once was. It goes to show old people aren't always smart. Ding-a-Ling, on the other hand, was very boring, a very Sharon Miller based episode. I rank Freddie as a B. He's fine. The fact that out of everyone in this list, Whiff is the only one to still be relevant in the show to this day. I really like Whiff, especially when he got reintroduced in CGI. He's very charming, Season 11 and 12 kind of felt like they wanted him to be more of an oblivious character who was bizarre, which had its charm. However, I appreciate how the CGI series treats him with a little more respect and shows that he wants to be taken more seriously. Heck, even All Engines Go depicts him nicely as this fun uncle who likes to create inventions and machines by using recycled garbage, provided with the voice of the one and only Joe Pingu, who captures the character perfectly. Anyway, enough about that. I thought Emily's rubbish was a fun introduction for Whiff. I like how they use Whiff's basis being sort of a grand engine to parallel Emily and even Spencer in the end. His episode also, at the very least, he as a character was made very specifically to his role. Like, it wasn't easily interchangeable with any other characters, which was an issue this era of the show had. He's got such an incredible design, a lovely personality to back it up, and how can I not mention him wearing glasses? A lot of people think Whiff wearing glasses is pointless and was just added so he could attract more fans to like his design. However, I like to believe that design team required Whiff to wear glasses so they could protect him from his eyes, from flies, since garbage attracts flies and glasses keep them out. And later on in the series, he just ended up requiring them since he was so used to wearing them. Whiff's time on the Hits era was short, appearing in a total of 2 episodes. So I'm glad CGI and even All Engines Go brought him back because it definitely helped with me liking him more. An easy A tier. Can I just say, people hate on him so much. I think Billy may be the most over-hated Thomas character of all time. Credit where credit's due, at least Billy has an actual definitive personality. Okay, it might not be likable for some, but at least he has an actual characterization unlike Flora or Colin. His whole ideology of his personality is meant to be unlikable. I mean, please, just look at him. Yeah, a character with a bright orange paint with a buck tooth. Of course we were aiming him to be a fan favorite. Plus, he appeared once. I would understand the hate if he had appeared like constantly and acted the way he did in his debut episode, but who's to say he wouldn't change if he did return? I get he's a hit character, so there's a likely chance he wouldn't change, but again, you never know, I guess. As for his introduction episode, while it is rather repetitive, I don't actually hate this episode that much. Thomas mentoring an engine is a pretty cute story concept, which I wish was shown more in the show in general. It was such a nice change of pace from what we usually got. And with all that in mind, I give Billy a C. I really like her, and I'm glad in recent years everyone in the fandom seems to agree that Madge is one of the more solid characters to come out of the hit era. The most wholesome and adorable thing we gained from the series is the fact that she has a motherly bond with narrow gauge engines in each of her episodes, and that she plays the role of a fun mom in Cool Truckings. The narrow gauge engines were subjected to Madge's nurturing, even nursing home type energy, in particular to Rheneas and Skarloey. She is charming and an endearing character. She's surprisingly never mentioned again, despite the fact that she would have made a fantastic CGI character for a road vehicle. It would be so good if she stayed around for a little while longer, because it was nice for the narrow gauge engines to have their own road companion. Cool Truckings and Wash Behind Your Buffers are one of my all-time favorites from this era. Visually appealing model work and sets, on-point camera angle, and unique plots. Madge easily gets an A. I like the idea of a non-troublesome truck, and it's a shame like most characters they didn't use him often. Hector the Horde was a really good episode which showcased a great development of both Thomas and Hector. I really like the moral of this episode too, pretty mature for Thomas, and that being, there's always a reason behind what makes someone who they are today. And then in season 12, James Works It Out, in which in my opinion is the best season 12 episode, continues Hector's small little arc by sharing a lead role with James. It was a nice and interesting change seeing a truck give advice to an engine. Hector's design is another selling point. Him being a hopper truck makes him stand out from both rolling stock and engines, as it makes him unique and memorable. I give Hector a B. I really enjoy him. Stanley was introduced as Thomas's replacement, who all the other engines liked because he was shiny and new, and was meant to be Thomas's competitor in a way. He was a plot device in the Great Discovery for Thomas's behavior and adds tension into the special. The issue was, that's the only thing they did with him. The fan content is where everyone gives Stanley what he lacks, tends to make Stanley shine brighter because he never really had a distinguishing personality. This also applies to the majority of the other engines on this list, but I've observed Stanley is typically the one that exhibits this trend most frequently. You'd think they would expand upon him since they brought him back into CGI, but they didn't. In fact, he got the worst out of all 4 of them. He ended up being a background character that changed his voice every few appearances. He's a character I want to like, but there is no real reason why to like him outside of him being the nice guy and his stellar design. Due to this, I have to give him a C. Hevo Thomas was an average episode. Out of the 3 newbies in season 12, I think Hank was executed the best, but at the same time, that is not saying much. Once again, his design is nice, and his class is really interesting, being a big American engine, but they never expanded upon it. Imagine having 2 models, but just only using him once and never again. A weak C. Colin has very little personality. He is a crane, works at the wharf, and that is about it. He was the first to introduce the idea of cranes being lonely because they couldn't go places, which would then get reused for other future cranes for the show. I mean, they literally shrunk his nose down just so they could sell toys of him. I think that speaks for itself. His introduction story is remotely boring and is more so a FREDDIE focused story. It is boring because nothing feels like it is at stake. A really blank slate character. He is a D tier for me. You can follow the pattern here with these last few season 12 newbies. I really didn't want to end these characters on a bad note, but here we are. Her design looks really nice and had potential as another steam tram, but was immediately wasted. She had no purpose outside of being a new engine in her introduction episode. Her dialogue doesn't say anything about who she is.
That sounds exciting. If you say so, Thomas. If you say so, Thomas. I'm sorry, Thomas.
I see fans tend to group her with Neville being equally blank and unlikable, in which I disagree. In Thomas and the New Engine, there was at least a conflict going on around Neville that you at least felt bad for him. You sympathize with him. He had gotten bullied by Aryan Bert, and now the whole island was spreading rumors about him. For Flora, you got nothing to feel bad about. She was just there to serve the role on being the new engine. The wiki claims her to be shy and timid, but that just feels too similar to Molly. Doesn't help her case that she's also yellow. She's bland, her debut episode was boring, and that's about it. An easy D tier. That was everyone. That was every single character in the Hit era ranked. I'm gonna provide a screenshot to give you all a summary on where I have ranked everyone on the tier list. The tier list I used was made by the Shiny Red Engine. Link to it will be in the description below if you'd like to make your own. And before someone comments on it, yes, I did not include Proteus because Proteus is a completely different matter. He's just parts of a lore, and besides, he's not even really considered a character. It's questionable if he actually exists in universe or not. I love him in fan media though. Thank you so much for watching. This video took way too long to make, and analyzing characters who barely appeared was a challenge, so I really do hope you all enjoyed it. See you next time.